Hello, 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 hello. Happy to see everyone that is here. We're going to give it a couple of minutes. People are just going to slowly come in. So we're going to get started in another 2 minutes or so. So happy you're here. Welcome. I'm excited about this conversation with all of you. And we're going to get started in a few. Oh, now people are coming in. So we'll get started in a couple more minutes and then we'll get into it. For those of you coming in, welcome. Black to Work. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about the decline of diversity and equity and inclusion. As you're coming in, happy for you to be in the space. We're going to start in a couple more minutes. Next time when you guys tune back in, we're going to have some sounds, some waves that you guys can listen to while we're waiting. But for now, just come into the space, get ready for the conversation. I'm looking forward to it. We'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll get started. We got people in the chat. Samantha, I see you. Representing Georgia. All right, we're going to get into it. People will be joining as we go, and we'll make this happen. Love seeing people in the chat as you're in. A couple of things just to know is in this conversation, this exchange, yes, there are slides, but I thrive off of dialogue. And so the chat is there. Please feel free to add thoughts, add comments, add any feedback that you have. Please feel free to engage in the chat. Now that people are rolling in, I'm just going to get started. So my name is Giorgio Chatelain, and I'm here with Alchemy. I am a psychotherapist, clinical supervisor, been working in the field for over 20 years, and I have my own practice, Chatelain Therapy. So I'm happy to be here. Always great to be working with Alchemy and bringing you all this information. And if you don't know about Alchemy, just discovering Alchemy, at Alchemy, what we're doing is we are building a network of Black therapists to make mental health care more accessible and effective for the Black community. Go to the website, check it out. You can find a therapist that's right for you. You can access content, use Alchemy, check out Alchemy, and you'll be able to do some of these live sessions like we're doing this evening in conversations. So check it out. Thank you for being here. Tell people about it. Spread the word. This is something that I know is needed and wanted across the board. And so I'm excited to be back here, bringing the Black to Work series back to you so we can get into these conversations. So what we're going to be doing today is covering and talking about the state of DEI right now, what the current landscape looks like. Apologize for all of you. I'm just dealing with some light. All right, technical issue done. We're going to talk about the landscape and the psychological impact that it has on us. And what I want to do is like run through a professional framework by prioritizing your mental health and your mental well-being. So this is not just like how to, be successful in the workplace, but it's really how to do it with prioritizing your mental health. We're going to be talking about some strategic ways of how to be visible or how to engage in the space, especially given the current climate. and how to be intentional about creating support networks that allow you to build your resilience and actually have a place to go. All right, so we'll keep doing thoughts. That's a really good question. I think, Ryan, you can like answer that one in terms of the question that that person had about searching and accessing and looking for a therapist. Let's talk about the landscape. Let's get into it. You know, if you're not listening to the news, but all we kind of hear about is how our current administration, and even before the current administration, there have been rollbacks in anything that has to do with DEI. 40% decrease in DEI leadership roles since 2022, 35% reduction in corporate DEI budgets, 60% of companies scaling back diversity recruitment initiatives. We hear about it. More and more companies are coming out saying that they're pulling it back. People are revamping, renaming. And this is the current landscape that we're in. And I don't know about all of you, but there's been a lot of conversations I have with people I work with, and even myself as I'm navigating through this landscape, is recognizing the impact that this has on the individual. So this is some of the psychological impact. Increase racial battle fatigue. You can put any comment in the chat if you've experienced any of these things where it's like, there's already, even in the DEI conversation with the workspace, sometimes it was really working on making sure that the company adopted or at least appreciated the work that was happening with some depth or integration or ideas of it. But I've actively decided to retreat and be intentional about how I engage with the news, because it's not helping me constantly hearing about all the ways that DEI is getting attacked and reduced, and hearing people talk about it. It's just exhausting. Heightened imposter phenomenon. More people are questioning and doubting themselves, making it difficult to figure out, well, am I supposed to be here? And I know that it's not about me, but how do I not make it about me as people are questioning it? Do I belong in the company that has just publicly declared that they don't care about DEI? What do I do with that? How do I operate? How do I navigate? And the identity-based stress and anxiety is a real piece. Someone agrees in the chat, they've been experiencing it too. So these are some of the impacts that you have, and understanding your response to it is also important. I really do believe in the power of acknowledgement, the power of being able to name the thing, because we typically experience whatever we go through alone and individually, but being able to come to a space like this and a conversation like this allows you to know, one, you're not alone. Some of the things that you're experiencing aren't just you, other people are experiencing them too, which is why I like making sure that I'm going to name and speak to some of the realities that we go through. So understanding your psychological response. Hypervigilance in a professional setting. I don't know if you've experienced this or you have a coworker that's experienced this, where now you're paying extra attention to what your manager is saying or what your coworkers are saying, or if they're assigning you something or not assigning you something or reassigning you to a different project. There's hypervigilance, trying to understand the impact, where it's coming from. What does that mean? Performance anxiety or perfectionism. I want to do really well. I want to show and prove my value, or I want to be quote unquote perfect in order to make sure that I can't make or do any mistakes, as a result of being in a space where I just don't know if I feel safe or seen, and I have to work. I've always worked twice as hard, but now I have to make sure I'm paying extra attention to it. Tired of the code switching. It feels like doing it a lot more and more cautiously now than ever before, because of how things can be interpreted and the wave of attacks that's going on the DEI system. Withdrawal. Don't necessarily want to be part of groups. If you work in a company that is an employment resource group that was initially set up as a support, for a lot of companies in a lot of places, they've noticed that attendance and participation has gone down. Because for some people, just given the climate that we're in, they just want to retreat, do their job, and go. Other people might overcompensate, volunteer to do too much, take on too many projects just to be able to show their value or their worth within the company that they're in. And all of that comes with emotional labor. These are all normal responses to the systemic changes and challenges that are going on. I can't say that enough, and I like repeating it. These are normal responses to what is happening. And just kind of a show of a thumbs up, hand up, a clap or not, how many people have been experiencing this themselves in their current environments? Put it in the chat. I want to see who is out there. All right. I just got one person who's navigating. Oh, yep. All right. People are in it, they're experiencing it, they're saying it. So you see, I'm not just like saying the thing, people are acknowledging and recognizing that this is where they're at, this is what they're experiencing in their own day-to-day lives at work. I want to navigate and walk and talk us through a professional framework with mental health being the foundation. So this isn't just about being successful and climbing up. This is really about how do you think about and how do you navigate through prioritizing your mental health as you're walking through your professional settings, especially in this current environment that we're in. Skills to master and self-efficacy. So I talk about this a lot when I'm working with people is when there are certain things that are outside of your control, it can increase the anxiety, can increase the feelings of depression. And for the next while, it's really diving and focusing in on what do you have control over? What we can't control all the administration choices right now. We can't necessarily control what the head of our companies are choosing to participate in or not. We can't always control whether or not funding is going to be attached to our DEI groups, but we can control ourselves and our immediate spaces. And that is helpful in being able to kind of navigate through the impact, the psychological impact that it has to navigate through what's happening in our climate, the attack on DEI, and then as a result, the attack on us individually or our coworkers or our families that are in the work space. So you want to develop expertise that builds your confidence. So refocusing on yourself and building up yourself. Focus on growth mindset over perfectionism. If you focus on growth, it means that your chances are you're going to make a mistake. You're not going to know everything. And the way to really kind of challenge and move is to be able to grow. Grow comes with pain. I just want to remind everyone of that. But being able to do that is different than making sure that everything is perfect. It's really making sure that I'm gaining tools and skills to learn. And you want to celebrate progress to combat imposter phenomena. And I'm going to talk a little bit afterwards about tools and things that people can do in order to help remember the progress and remember the intentional ways that they have actually been doing things that are valuable at work in their own profession and their own growth. Let's talk about being intentional about speaking about our worth and really naming it. Recognizing your contributions to reinforce self-value. I talk about this, I say it, and it's honestly something that I have to remind myself of often. For a lot of people, they're just used to pulling everything together. And I don't know about all of you, but I've often been told, and I was told, and this is like not just like told, but understanding that you have to work twice as hard or harder than other people who don't look like you in order to kind of prove that you are making. And because of that, you take on a certain amount of burden without recognizing all the things that you're doing in order to contribute to what's happening. And if you don't take time to actually name it or say it, you can lose track of all the ways that you've been growing, all the value add that you give to the role and to the company. And it's easy to just get caught up in paying attention to what you're doing wrong as opposed to all the ways that you succeeded. So again, I'm going to talk a little bit afterwards about things that you can do specifically to capture and pay attention to what you're doing intentionally. Separate your professional worth from your organizational validation. Easier said than done. A lot of these things I'm going to talk about sound simple, but I understand that the reality of it, it can become difficult to do. Part of it is because things rationally are okay, but then emotions kick in. And sometimes we do tie the two. If you recognize your professional worth, but you're in a company or an organization where it's not being acknowledged or recognized, it's hard to separate the two sometimes. And sometimes you have to separate yourself in order to do that from the company, from the space, which is not always possible, but something for you to consider. In practice, positive self-talk around accomplishment. What I love about that insecure scene, I know I always reference it, but it's when Issa Rae is like in the mirror, rap battling and just like being herself up. It's funny, but it's real and it's needed. And if you don't tell yourself positive things, you won't pay attention to it. So it's important to be intentional about doing that. I'm not going to rap battle for you guys right now, but I got lyrics. No, I don't have bars. Strategic positioning and boundaries. I'm going to start off by talking about how being able to do this can often be dependent on the role that you have within the company or the organization that you work in. And so it's not always possible to do this, but when possible, you want to pay attention to it. Align with projects that energize you rather than drain. We don't always have a choice of what we're going to do or what we're assigned to do. And sometimes we're assigned a role and tasks that are draining. And it's when possible, if you can align with anything that can energize you, then do that intentionally. Establish healthy work boundaries. You've probably heard a lot about boundaries. People talk about boundaries on a regular basis. And sometimes when people talk about boundaries, they talk about this like absolute wall of no. Standing on boundaries is seriously on deck for me, protecting my peace. Good. I'm happy that you're going to do that. If you can say no and you do say no, good. It is a complete sentence. For those of us that struggle with saying no, I say us because I'm included in that. I often suggest a boundary can be yes and or yes but. I might still do the thing, but then I'm doing the yes and the and in order to identify what I might need. So yes, I can help with that. I just need to be out of here by 5. Yes, I can take on a new project. I just need you to clarify priorities so I know which one I should put in because I have 10 projects on my plate. Yes, but, yes, and again, it's the idea of the cushion. If you're already saying yes and you say yes quite often, adding those things allow you to identify things that you may need. Yes, let me get back to make sure that I have space in my calendar to fit that in. Identify psychologically safe spaces within your organization. I want to highlight the fact, and I talk about this often, is what is a safe space? And, different people come at it in different ways. I just want you to question whether or not you could ever fully be safe at work because of the environment you're in. And so ERGs can be really great places, but sometimes it's just finding a coworker that you vibe with, that you get along with, that can help you get out of your own head in it. I've been able to have some really good coworkers that ended up being safer spaces than not. I talk about safer spaces, but I actually encourage brave space because it allows me to control the idea that no one else can really provide safety for me. If I'm brave enough, then I can enter into an exchange or a conversation that allows me to engage with somebody else, be strategic about my vulnerability, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and decide what I want to share or not share, but allows me to get into a place where I'm still communicating and exchanging without this concept that someone else can manage my safety because they don't know what I need to be safe, and I don't always recognize it initially. So I say looking for safe spaces at work, but recognizing that work can be transactional. There are a lot of power dynamics that are in there. And so I really encourage people to look for spaces where they can be brave. Strategic visibility to be able to create psychological safety. Now, this is in a space where, with all the attacks on DEI, and even before the attacks on DEI, it was important to be able to figure out, well, how am I going to be strategic about my visibility? And there are core principles and benefits to them. Authenticity balanced with self-preservation can reduce your cognitive dissonance. The idea is that, and I don't know if you are in environments in which people talk about and like praise the idea of authentic self, bring your authentic self. We want to see your authentic self. And I don't know if you ever experienced this where you're like, all right, let me bring some of my authenticity. And then people struggle with who I am in my authenticity, right? Where suddenly aspects of my authentic self make people uncomfortable. People find it either aggressive or direct or too intense. And therefore, it's really not a place where they ask for authenticity, but they don't know how to deal with the authenticity of me. It's highlighting things, naming certain pieces, recognizing that there are things that aren't equitable and speaking to it. So you want to think about both those things in order to not feel like you are constantly under attack. Strategic vulnerability. I know for myself, in the beginning of my career, I used to get a lot of feedback of, you're people like you're doing really good work, but you don't really talk much. You don't share anything. So people don't know you. My first response was, well, is that part of my job description? And the answer was no. But what I did learn is that my silence allowed for people's imagination to fill in the space. And so I had to learn how to engage and share intentionally on purpose. For some people, I need to be vulnerable with, and other people is just making sure that I can engage and be able to see them because there was a perceived threat in my withdrawal. So for yourself, you want to kind of think about that so that you can decrease a little bit of your code switching fatigue. Energy management across visibility efforts gives you an increased sense of agency and control. You don't have to volunteer to be part of everything and all things. Be mindful about what you're adding or what you're doing and why you're doing it so that you don't get caught up and pulled into a space where you feel like you have to do all the things. This idea of overcompensation for the work that you're doing is a problem. So in order to avoid overcompensation, just be mindful of the energy that you're spending. And so as you are looking to be seen, it doesn't have to be everywhere, it's in the strategic places. Now let's talk about strategic positioning and boundaries. We talked about the importance for being strategic in our visibility. Did I go backwards? I went backwards. Sorry about that. Navigating visibility without psychological harm. There are proactive strategies so that you can try to navigate this without so much or too much harm. You want to assess the psychological safety before accepting visibility opportunities. Just going on the other part where we're talking about the energy. There are certain times where there are projects or things when you can volunteer for it. Pay attention to, does this serve me or am I now going to be floating in the wind all by myself? Identify triggers and developing coping strategies. If there is a coworker, if there is a team, if there are certain projects that set you off, a certain person that when you work with them, every time you work with them, you have the same response, and you can't help but having to work with them because you don't necessarily have a choice, then you want to develop some coping strategies, figure out how you're going to deal or navigate them. Some woo-saw breathing. I kind of make it as a joke, but being able to have intentional ways of releasing before or after the interaction is really helpful. Prepare mentally for both the positive and negative outcomes. I tell people often is that if you know that there's a possibility for negative, don't just hope for the positive, prepare for both, right? If there is no negative, then that's a pleasant surprise, but you don't want to be caught off guard in it. Now, we can't always plan, we can't always expect what those interactions are going to be or what people are going to say. So as much as possible, you want to come into something and say, well, this is going to help me reduce the harm if I can be prepared for both. And establish post-exposure self-care routines. This is probably one of my favorites in terms of being able to be intentional about what do I do before I enter into this meeting? What do I do before I enter into my one-on-one with my manager, before my shift? And then what am I going to do afterwards? If I know I'm about to have a difficult conversation, let me plan that I'm not running into another meeting right afterwards. What am I establishing as my own self-care routine that's going to be helpful? I get to work from home. I have the privilege of doing that. And if I can, one, being able to walk out and be with my family is great. Being able to walk my dog is great. Getting outside to stretch in between the difficult pieces is one of the ways that I do. So I want you to think and be intentional about, if you're going to be navigating these spaces of visibility, how to plan to reduce your self-harm. Even though we plan for it, doesn't mean that harm will not occur. Navigating visibility without psychological harm doesn't mean that there aren't moments that harm will be there. Sometimes we can do all this stuff before, but we'll still walk into an exchange or a situation where we get hurt, we get attacked, we get insulted, we get questioned in a way that makes it really hard. Just by a show of hands, you can put your hand up or not, it's up to you. How many of you have been in a work environment where you have incurred harm based off an exchange that you've had with coworkers, with a manager? Love to see it in the chat. 100 hands up. All right, so people have experienced it, are seeing it. When it happens again, you understand I didn't say if, but when it happens again, I want you to give yourself permission to step back and process. Sometimes we're too busy running, or we've been told that pain is part of what it means to be successful in the workplace or to be one of few or one of only, that we don't allow ourselves to process the fact that something happened and take a step back and figure out how we're going to address it for ourselves. Sometimes we don't even want to validate the fact that these emotions actually exist. I'm not supposed to be upset. I'm not supposed to be hurt. I'm not supposed to be offended. Well, there's not supposed to be, and then there's the reality of how you feel. I always talk about how we spend too much time trying to control feelings as opposed to looking at actions, but leading and acknowledging your feelings is important. Engage support systems. I'm a therapist. I work with people on a regular basis, and I always experience someone who's like, Giorgio, I haven't seen you in like 3 or 4 weeks, and things were tough. It was really rough for me, but I'm feeling better now. That's why I reached back out. I'm like, the whole purpose of me as a therapist is to help you through the moments that are difficult. But we tend to naturally just want to retreat within ourselves. And so what I'm suggesting is that ahead of time, plan on who your support system is going to be. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But it's important to engage, especially in moments of harm. Practice self-compassion. You could prepare as much as you want. Doesn't mean you can always control whether or not you feel hurt, and that's okay. And when needed or it's appropriate, document the patterns that are happening so that you can pay attention to it for yourself, whether or not you decide to do it formally, or at least you have some documentation that helps you decide whether or not where you are is where you need to continue to be. In order to help create safer spaces, and I won't say actual safe spaces, but safer spaces, you want to figure out how you're going to communicate with your boundaries. I saw that someone wrote in the chat that they're standing on boundaries, and that's what they're focused on. And so these are some things that you can put into place, or at least prepare, so you can communicate your boundaries in a way that allows you to feel safer. Prepare talking points to reduce anxiety, depending on if you need to advocate for yourself with a manager, with a colleague. You definitely want to be able to prepare what it is that you want to say. And typically talk about like my 3 main points that I want to make sure that I share or identify, and action steps to help that happen. Bridge phrases to navigate uncomfortable topics. I was thinking, prepare the thing that on the other hand, just have the things ready so that you can divert the thing that makes you uncomfortable or that just isn't great. Sometimes people want to pry deep into your thing. I appreciate your interest in it. I was really thinking that it'd be helpful for us to focus on, and then you keep moving. Develop responses for microaggressions. Sometimes it's active responses, and sometimes we're shocked by the kind of things that people are going to say or comment on. What they'll ask about your sexual identity, about your gender identity, about your um, culture in general. So there are times where you can be prepared for it, and other times you still get shocked by it. But when you can prepare, it's great. And recognize, and seems to be a repeat, recognize when to engage versus preserve energy. Not everything needs all of your attention all of the time. These, now I want to kind of jump into the things that you can do to really help your self validation and pay attention to yourself. That's a really good question. The question came up is we suggest sharing topics before the conversation. And it's a good way of preparing your talking points. And for some people, it's really great to be able to put an agenda forward, right? So these are the things I want us to address so that they have an idea, they can prepare themselves, they're not caught off guard. Then you walk in and then you can be able to do it. Um, my favorite thing to say, it depends, because it's all situational and what goes on. But if you can control and you can like set up I want to talk about these three things, great. If you think that'll be helpful, if you think that that's going to lead to someone avoiding the conversation, then maybe you don't send them ahead of time, but you come prepared with the things that you want to talk about. So I think it's a combination of both, depending on who it is that you're addressing and who you're about to engage with. Spoke about it before, making sure that you're intentional about highlighting your accomplishments to be able to go against the negative self-talk. Sometimes it's writing it in a journal. Um, there was something that it was making sure that I had a list and writing a list of all the things that I was doing and the results of the things I was doing at work. It was actually Samantha who recommended it to me. And I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I didn't always do it. But when I did, and I look back at it, I was able to see all the things that I was like I wasn't actually paying attention to, but all the things throughout the year and throughout my work year that I was like, oh, when it came to my appraisal, I was able to say, these are all the things that I've done that it's so easy for me to do and not pay attention to it that I can easily discount it. And it helps with the negative self-talk, because you might get a negative feedback here or there, and we take that, we make it larger than the entirety of who we are. Capture positive feedback to review during difficult moments. Depending where you work, you might get a little shout out here. Um, Keep your appraisals that were positive so you can review them, so you have them. In difficult moments, it's helpful to know that you've been successful, and you want to hold those things on purpose intentionally. No challenges overcome that you overcame, any challenge that you might have overcome in the past, note them, because that means that you've done it before. Sometimes when we're facing hardships or facing difficulties, we know it's not new, but unless we're intentional about being able to kind of name the fact that it's happened before, we forget that we've had the skills and the tools to make it this far, and there's other tools that we can put in place to make it happen again. And recognize that your identity does impact and reinforce a sense of purpose. I don't want people to be colorblind. I want them to see who I am in every aspect of me. I do want them to note and recognize my gender and not hide it, which is why the attack on DEI becomes difficult and frustrating, where it feels like we're hiding the idea that it exists. And so we want to be intentional about making sure that we pay attention to ourselves. How do you implement these self-care pieces? You want to review it during moments of self-doubt. Those are the best times to kind of come into it and really figure out what it is that's going on, what's happening for you. Use as preparation or performance discussions. If you're getting to a place where you need to ask for a raise, or you have your mid-year appraisal or end-of-year appraisal, this is where you come into it. You're like, okay, let me go over all the things that I've done. Oh, it's not what I feel, but there's like actual concrete evidence of the ways that I've contributed to this, and this is why I'm asking for what I'm asking for. And share selectively with trusted allies for validation. There are people at work, when we're talking about having a network within your workspace that you can feel safer in. Maybe one or two people, but people that you're like, let me like check on with you. Does this make sense? Might be people outside of work. Be like, oh man, you're killing it. Look at you. You're doing this great. Let's make sure that you keep asking for it. And you have cheerleaders if you're intentional about it. So now I'm going to ask the chat again. Do you have a group of people, or do you have a network in which you've already identified that are your cheerleaders or people that you trust enough to be able to validate? Do you have that in your workspace? If you do, thumbs up or hands up. I got a thumbs up. Only one of you? I don't believe it. And if you don't, then there's a project for you to do. And if you can't in your workspace, then it's important to be able to find it outside of that. People talk about networking a lot within the workspace, and how to network in order to find other positions, other jobs is important to do. Well, this networking mapping is in order for you to be intentional about seeking your emotional support. You want to ask yourself these questions and make sure that you can come with a list. It doesn't have to be a lot of people, but one or two people that you feel like you could be able to do this with. Who provides emotional safety in your world? Doesn't necessarily have to be at work, but who do you have that exists that provides you emotional safety? Who validates your full identity? You talk to them and they don't just recognize their strengths, but they can see potentially the areas of growth and still recognize your ability to move forward and move up. Who helps you decompress? Now, we all have that person or that friend that will hype you up and get really excited when it's time to go to war. They'll fight with you, but sometimes that's not the person you always need to help decompress because they're always at this level. So, who do you have that can help you decompress? If you have the same person for everyone, then that's great, but sometimes you have different people for different pieces. Who provides you honest feedback with care? There are people who will provide you honest feedback, but they're constantly slapping you in the face with the honest feedback, and it doesn't really feel like care. So you want honest feedback with someone who actually cares. That's right, my bestie. For me, it's my wife. She'll tell me. She'll let me know if I'm making sense or not. And who models healthy success? That's right. You need someone to mix honesty with empathy. If it's just honesty for the sake of attack, then that's not really helpful. We know how to do that to ourselves. So you want someone to mix the two. And then who models healthy success? There are people who are successful but aren't so healthy, and we want to be able to have a combination of all of this. Doing this intentionally allows you to map what your emotional support is. Having this on hand because we will experience harm in this current environment of attacks on all levels. You want to make sure that you have these things in place. And if you don't, well, then the action plan for you as you leave here is to intentionally seek that and go create it. Building your ecosystem, in addition to the networking that we're talking about, is creating some micro affirmations for yourself. This is your internal thing that you're going to do. Create some micro affirmations. You go, you got it. So my daughter and I, what we do is we watch. She's 14, and we'll watch the old episodes of Cosby Show. Anyway, and one episode, Theo was talking about how he gives, he studies and he'll high five himself as he's doing something. But create some micro affirmations. Sometimes it's writing it, putting notes for yourself, making sure that you have a list of your accomplishments, something that you could either put on a mirror or you can read or you can access so you can remind it. It's great. There are apps that you can use to be able to do that, but anything that can allow you to really remind yourself of the things that you've done and that you're doing. Identity daily restoration practices. What do you do that makes you feel good, especially in the fatigue of code switching? Where can you go to? Who can you talk to? One of the things that I always appreciated was being able to have certain coworkers that I could just reach out to. I didn't have to say much. I'd be like, hey, and like, yep. And we're like, all right, cool. We know. And that made me feel like present. Or to check in, did you experience what I experienced in that meeting? They're like, absolutely. I'm like, okay, that felt good. Recognize early warning signs of burnout. If you're so used to just going through it, fighting through it, feeling like the fact that you're tired or that Sunday nights are hard or that Wednesdays are just exhausting, and you just feel like I just got to keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it because that's what I have to do, then you're going to ignore the signs of burnout. And this is the thing: once you finally get to a place of burnout, it's a buildup, and it takes a while to then heal from that. So being able to pay attention to it, see what's happening, allows you to be intentional about creating those release spaces. That's for your internal piece. External support development. I'm a therapist, so I believe in therapy, and therapy and coaching resources. Look for them. Alchemy as a source. Reach out to friends or family that can do recommendations, but being intentional about seeking additional support. And I say that knowing that that can be a huge step for many people, just admitting that they need additional help. I'm just normalizing it and naming it for all of you. Affinity groups and psychological safety. I've really appreciated and needed the employment resource groups that I've joined in the companies that I've been in. Didn't mean that I was active in all of them, but I was definitely a part because it was a place that I was able to both witness like-minded and people with similar lived experiences at me. And that gave me a space at work that was really helpful. And if it's not at work, then it's something outside of that that could be helpful for you. Mindfulness and stress reduction communities, places where you can just ground yourself, be mindful, and be able to engage in things that allow you to, for a second, just breathe and exhale. So I got some takeaways and action plans for everybody here and for you to share with others if they haven't done it. You want to conduct a personal energy audit of activities and relationships. Do your own personal energy audit of the activities that you have and the relationships that you have in your life. How many of them are inspiring you and giving you energy, and how many of them are draining? Let's just do the inventory and see what you have, and then being intentional about the ones that are going to fill you up versus the ones who take away. Implement one boundary to protect your mental well-being. Remember, it doesn't have to be a wall. It can be a fence where you can see the other person through it, but implement one boundary. Want something that you can do between now and the next time that we meet, because you're all coming back next week for us to talk some more. Create a self-affirmation practice around your professional value. One practice that is helpful around your professional value. Connect with one supportive professional contact. This is not about getting the other job or getting a link to another position. This is a supportive professional contact that might be within the work or someone who works in your field that you can talk to and share what your experiences are like, and that can tell you what you're experiencing makes a lot of sense and help you guide it from an emotional perspective. And schedule a specific self-care practice after visibility events. After you've presented, after you've done something that specifically to be able to have yourself seen, a project that you've taken on, some kind of thing that you've done with intention, you got to pat yourself on the back, give yourself the opportunity to acknowledge the fact that that took energy in order to make it happen, and do something that is self-care. Now, I went through those. Choose one. If you do all of them, that's great. But my suggestion is try to do one, make one happen. And if it's not one of these and it's not for you, then make sure that you share with somebody that could benefit from it. Now, I am moving into the question, answer, and discussion. So I love that. My old boss and mentor shows me healthy success. I love that. I'm going to open it up. Do people have questions? Do people have thoughts? Do they have comments? Do they have experiences that they want to share? Please enter into the chat. It's helpful when other people see themselves recognized or seen, but it's also helpful for me because I've been talking this whole time and I'd love to hear from all of you. What are things that this brings up? Does any of this resonate? Any of this that you can use? Will there be a recording of this? I'm shooting that back to Ryan. I'm happy that you found it helpful. And I think Ryan's on and he'll answer whether or not there's a recording of this. Anybody else have any thoughts, questions, concerns, applications, questions about how to apply this? Yes, there will be a recording. I appreciate that. This was really informative, and I appreciate the recognition that these things aren't easy to apply, but can be done. I'll just kind of repeat that. It sounds simple, but the truth is it comes with weight, which is why we started off by talking about the psychological impact of all these things. And so, yes, I can say find a network. If you don't already have one, then that can feel exhausting to figure out who am I going to talk to? How am I going to talk to it? Should I be talking to anybody? Um, if I do self-care activity after a visibility event, sounds relatively simple, but doing it is really the work. The affirmations, it sounds like it should be easy just to say positive things about yourself, but we're so good at being critical that sometimes that is really difficult. And it is true that it can be done. How do you discern agility versus selling out? Ooh, that's such a good question. You're going to hate my answer because I'm going to say it depends on the individual and it depends on how much your ability to really kind of live with the decisions that you make. The only person you ever really have to answer to is yourself. And I say that with knowing that we live around and amongst other people and people are going to have a thoughts or opinion, but you're the one who has to deal with the consequence of whatever you choose to do, whether you choose to like follow what people are saying or whether you choose to really kind of live by someone else's standard. You still have to go home and go to bed with yourself and figure out if it makes sense for you. And it's so hard, this idea of agility versus selling out. If it doesn't match your own values, if you go back and you reflect and you're like, this is not representative of who I am and how I want to live. If I can't look at my kids and be proud of what I do or what I did, or if I can't talk to my family or my friends, and I find myself completely isolated because I can't stand by it, that's an indication that maybe there's something that you have to like shift or change in what you're doing that maybe is less agile and more something, and I won't necessarily call it selling out, but something that doesn't align with your own values and the own way that you see things. I hope that I know that's not a like direct answer, but something for you kind of consider in that. Joanna, I agree that it's great that there is shared experience that we can talk about in this group and how important it is to seek community in it. I know that I've appreciated, and my goal is to always make sure that I can create spaces where people can have acknowledgement that what they're going through is not them alone. We experience it by ourselves, but we're not the only ones going through it. And it's important for us to be able to um, link in, especially in these times where we feel like we're under attack. And it's not just these times, there's been times that have been ongoing. But I appreciate that, Alchemy brought these back so that we can continue these conversations and people can find community. Uh, For example, name changes away from DEI. Should we concede to that? Oh, that's huge. And I didn't know how I was gonna like enter into it. Should we concede to it? I'll say this, and this is very much full transparency, my opinion, and I don't know how popular it is. I've struggled because there are a lot of places that had DEI that weren't doing DEI. There are a lot of places that had it as show, but did not know how to actualize it and didn't actively actualize it. And so the rebranding is problematic, um, because it is something that comes with like hiding what you're actually doing. But for some places, they weren't actually doing it. So this is not me kind of giving a full answer to that piece of it. Do we concede to it or not? I think when people are hiding what they're doing, it's problematic, but it's also, are people actually pivoting in a way that is just another show, or are they being more conscious and specific about what that means and what that looks like? So I know I don't have a really good answer for that, but um, that's my thought on it. I'm not saying that the way that they're going about it is good. I struggle with the conversations of the fear that's attached to DEI. But I also know that there are a lot of pretenses that were surrounded by DEI, and then people weren't paying attention to the intensity that came with it. And so that's my mind on it. I know I'm not fully answering it. Code switching and masking is so exhausting. The older and further you get into your career, the worse it gets. Does anyone else have experienced that? Thank you for the safe space. Um, when you feel like you've been pretending for a really long time and that you've been code switching for a really long time, you do get exhausted the further you get. Because, and I'll say just in general, people I've worked with, and probably my own experience, is that at some point you feel like, well, people should recognize me for my talent and my ability. And if I've moved up and I've been working this long, um, I should be able to have people just kind of take me for who I am, this whole idea of authentic self. And it becomes that more exhausting when people continue to project ideas on you as opposed to who you are and not see you. So I'll just say that I agree. It's exhausting, it's tiring. Um, and that's why the idea is like being intentional about seeking support wherever you're at. You need to at least have one other person that you can like turn to and be like, oh, can you just help me verify what I'm experiencing or what I'm hearing? Someone that I don't have to hold up a pretense. And the pretense is not in your ability to do the work, but your ability to be received. And that's what becomes exhausting. I'd rather have a non-DEI title and doing the work of DEIB rather than be a performative in DEI title. I agree 100%, emphasize that. True. I feel like DEI was a falsehood for companies just to fit in and being ethical when they really are not. There's so many things that sometimes feel performative. And the other reason that I try to take a step back and I suggest that people be intentional about how they engage with the news, because in the 24-hour news cycle, everything is intense, everything is on an attack. And it's really hard to sift through what I should pay attention to, what I should be reactive to or not. And there are things that are performative. And as much as I truly do appreciate the moment in time where the country and the world was protesting and taking care and bringing acknowledgement to some issues within our communities of violence and making sure that our lives were recognized and seen. It's also true that it's hard to continue that piece, and that people showed up that aren't necessarily showing up in the same ways. Companies showed up because there was some people had really good intentions and other people it made sense because it was a wave and profit. The same way that there was a wave bringing all this stuff in, we're seeing the same wave happen and dissipate away from it. As Kendrick Lamar said, turn the TV off. True. Sometimes you have to, sometimes you need a break. I agree with that. Please keep throwing your questions in as I talk a little bit about this. Like Costco. Alchemy therapy services, for you to know. There is a QR code for you to scan if you haven't already gone onto the site or checked it out or share with somebody. It's culturally aligned therapy for Black community. Connect with a therapist who understands your story. Book a session, start your healing. Check out the site. Check out the link. There are all kinds of services and tools and being able to connect to you. We understand the importance of being able to have people who you work with that have a shared lived experience. I'm not saying that's the answer by itself, but it is a great way to start being able to engage in the care. If you've never been in therapy before, it's a good way to introduce. If you've been in therapy and you found that you didn't find the person that connected, a place to reach out and seek. I want to thank you all for joining and being part of this conversation. I appreciate that the chat was really people creating community and exchanging. I hope you were able to walk away with a couple of action items that you can put in place. I will see you next week with somebody else. That's the other call to action. April 17th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 CT. I really appreciate you all being part of this conversation with me and engaging. Please tell somebody about it, share the information, share Alchemy. We are back to these conversations. You'll hear more about me talking about Black to Work, the realities, our realities of being within the workspace, the tools that we need to navigate and deal with our own emotional health and taking that under control. And so, thank you all again. I appreciate it. Please spread the word. Alchemy is doing this again. I'm excited to be part of the team and supporting us bringing and increasing generational health. I love it. Thank you all. Enjoy your evenings, the rest of your weeks, your weekends on purpose. And I look forward to connecting all with you on April 17th. Every 2 weeks after that, we'll continue these conversations, dive deeper into different aspects of our realities within the workspace. Black to Work, it's a real thing. And I thank you all for being here. Next time, there'll be music.